Hello, 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 the mask is back, and we are finally at a freaking great card again. It's been like quite a bit since we've gotten a really solid card, like a really good card. Um, I'd say it's like since 324, and we have the most entertaining UFC fighter of all time in the main event, so honestly, you can't ask for much more. I mean, to be fair, there is a few fights that fell off that certainly would have made this a goated card, but we'll take what we can get with this. I mean, it's still a really, honestly, great card, I'd say. Charles Radke, Francisco Prado. Now, this is one that I've been going back and forth on, and I certainly think that Francisco Prado, I think he could get this done. It's hard because I think that he went up against a pretty big welterweight. And no, you know what? I was considering Radke before this, but I'm gonna go with Prado. I'm gonna go with Prado via. This is such a risky pick because the whole time leading up to this, I was thinking Radke because I do think he's the more well-rounded guy. I think that he has some really good hooks. He has some all right uppercuts and overhands, but he doesn't really have a jab. Not too special with his jab. Um, it's not like a good jab, and his leg kicks aren't really there too much. I mean, he can go to it every now and again, but it's like flimsy and nothing really on it. And the wrestling is what really impressed me with his most recent performance. The fact that he went to his wrestling, and so I was going to say that he's the more well-rounded guy, whereas Francisco Prado, he's mostly going to have to rely on lining up that big shot, that big overhand, or that big hook. And I do think that Radke is better than him overall. He's more well-rounded. However, in MMA, it doesn't really matter sometimes. It just matters if you line up that big shot. And I think that Francisco Prado, he does have a really mean overhand. He has a really mean cross. And so I do think that he's going to line it up, find the foot position, sort of like Azamat Mirzakhanov versus Alexander Rakic, probably the inside foot position, not the outside. And I think that he's just going to be quicker. I understand that he's not really a natural welterweight, so he's gonna have a hard time lining up that shot. But I just think that Charles Radke, even though he is showing improvements with his wrestling and his grappling, and he does have some decent boxing of his own, I think that defensively he certainly leaves a lot to be desired. And so I think that Francisco Prado, being younger in this game, potentially being more improving with that age, more quick to improve, I think that he can, even though he's going to be um, way shorter in the reach as well. I think that he is going to be quicker to the punch, and I think that he's going to slip and potentially find the jab to the body and then line up the shot upstairs. I think that he is a bit of a he's underrated in that yes, his losses aren't great, but he is sort of a um, worse Kevin Vallejos. I know maybe we're not ready to say that, but he has had some competitive fights against these guys who on paper have this kickboxing style which is hard for him to deal with, but Radke is going to allow for him to box more, I feel like. And even if it grapples, I feel like he's going to end up on top potentially. Kelvin Gastelum versus Vicente Luque. I'm going to go with Gastelum via decision. I think that Luque is durable enough. I understand that sometimes he folds to offense, and it's quite bad to see. And I think that this could be a vintage Kevin Gastelum KO because Luque. He's slower, he's plottier, he's going to be easier to hit, especially at middleweight. His first time, I believe, it's going to be certainly weird seeing him at middleweight, but I think that that could also add to his durability. I think he's going to be easier to hit, but I do think that he's also going to be harder to chin. And I think that he will step in and land some decent overhands on Gastelum in moments, but because as we've seen, Joe Pyfer was able to do that. But I think that Kelvin Gastelum at middleweight, as let's be honest, more successful weight class, he is going to be able to tank those shots, and a lot of those shots are going to land on the temple, not really in the specific point, like the button to shut off Kelvin Gastelum's lights. And I think that Kelvin Gastelum, on the other hand, he's going to land more 1-2s down the pipe, and I think that he has a really good uppercut that's underrated. So I think that he's going to land some of those uppercuts with Vicente Luque often having that sort of worse Peter Yan shelling up high guard. And I think that even the body's gonna be open, the legs. I think he's kind of gonna be like a worse Paulo Costa out there against Gastelum. I feel like sort of a Walmart Costa versus Kopylov, but not nearly as many kicks, not nearly as many versatile kicks. It's gonna be more boxing. 29-28, I suppose. Chris Padilla, Macro Medros. I think they're both really good, but I'm gonna lean towards Padilla because I do think that I'm gonna say I'm gonna go decision because I think he showed what I needed to see for me to pick him in this fight. Whereas Medeiros, he likes to go for the jab. He doesn't keep his hands too high or tight to his chin too much. He likes to go to these leg kicks and the jabs, and sometimes he'll throw out some teeps, and he likes to play that long rangey game. He does have an all right cross, to be fair. But Chris Padilla, I feel like he does the Piotr Jan Hygaard type of thing that I was just talking about prior, like what Luque does a lot better, where he has the sort of longer reach as well, and he's for his height, 74 inches at 5'9" is quite good. It's really good actually for 5'9", and I think that he's able to sort of work these elbows in the clinch when it gets close, when he's able to sort of back people up with that boxing pressure. Granted, he's kind of plotty in his offense, and he doesn't really like he's very low output at range, but when he actually gets it going and he finds his moments to actually get inside, he is lethal with his elbows, with his hooks, and I think that he will find his timing with the few leg kicks and jabs that he throws out there. Whereas Mekro Medros, he's going to sort of feel like he's safe at that range, and he's gonna feel like, okay, I'm up on points slightly in that range. But then when Chris Padilla finds his moments to get inside, he's gonna cut him with some elbows and sort of make it a little more of a dogfight. So it's gonna be like a 29-28, I think. Tatiana Suarez, Lupita Godinez. I'm gonna go with Lupita Godinez. I'm going with a lot of underdogs in this card. I think that she has way better boxing. Suarez looks like a fish out of water in the boxing against the Zhang Wei Li, who Zhang Wei Li is more of a Muay Thai fighter, but even she's like just off of pure athleticism and speed and power, able to just lunge in with an overhand and find the target, even though it doesn't look like there's much setup behind it. Now, sometimes she does feint it quite well. She does use that bounce in her step to sort of keep her opponent guessing, but she does like leave herself kind of Whaley is she kind of does rely on her speed at times, I feel like. And Lupita Godinez, she is honestly in some regards a little more technical. So I do think that Lupita Godinez, she's gonna land some of those knees like what a Whaley does. She's gonna in the clinch sort of make it harder for Suarez to actually find those dominant positions. And even though Lupita is not the biggest for the weight class, Suarez is kind of just relying on her pure wrestling technique, which is very good. But I don't really like her performance against a Amanda Lemos. I understand that Lemos just got a really solid win against Ricci, um, but Ricci's not really all that. I mean, she was kind of like her best performance, honestly, is getting a 29-28 pitter-pat decision against Yao Xiaoyan. So I think that Tatiana Suarez, she's gonna definitely bank around a pretty dominant first round off of just getting control time. But I think rounds 2 and 3, it's gonna be closely fought, and it could even be split decision. But I'm gonna say that Lupita Godinez lands some really good hooks. And I think that she's gonna back her up against the fence and sort of make it very close, but it's going to be a clinch battle in rounds 2 and 3, and Lupita Godinez is going to separate enough to sort of just land a few knees, a few hooks, a little leg kicks here and there. I think the knees as well, especially up against the fence, is going to be good. I think that she's going to not leave her knees too high to allow Suarez to hike up the knee and get a takedown. I don't think that she's going to overextend too much. Mateusz Gamrot and Esteban Ribovic. I was so back and forth on this, and honestly, I'm not confident at all in this pick. I think that Esteban Ribovic's style, him having that pretty high guard, is going to be very detrimental to him in this fight, and I do think that he's going to get taken down a lot in this fight. However, comma, stealing MMA Che, um, I guess, speech there, where he always goes to however, comma. But I am gonna pick Estevan because I think that the damage is gonna be on his side here, and I think that this could totally be one of those fights like a Jalen Turner versus Mateusz Gamrot, where he's sort of getting the more submission attempts, and based off of that, and he lands a few more pitter-pat ground and pound shots, where it's like, okay, I mean, we're gonna forget about all this stuff on the striking, and we're just gonna give him the decision. I could totally see that for Mateusz Gamrot, and honestly, he did look really good in all things considered against a Charles Oliveira. However, we just saw a strength difference, and I do think that Mateusz Gamrot is the most skilled grappler in the division, like just behind Charles Oliveira and um, Armin Sarukian, although it's very close even between them because like Mateusz Gamrot did beat Armin in the grappling. Like, why are we forgetting that? People are saying that Armin's the best grappler in the division when Mateusz did beat him in that regard. And I do think that potentially he could beat him in a rematch because of the striking and because um, he's just bigger than Mateusz. Like, Armin just is a ball of muscle, and if he just times his moments to grapple more efficiently, he could definitely get like a 3-2, 4-1 decision. But Esteban, on the other hand, I think that he's just the kryptonite to Mateusz Gamrot's style on the feet. Mateusz likes to back up a lot. He likes to sort of react based on what you do with the takedowns. I feel like, and if he's hurt, he's always going to shoot, and it's going to become predictable for Esteban. Whereas Dan Hooker was kind of implementing that exact style I wanted to see from an Esteban, and it was working. He was backing him up, and he was dropping him because Mateusz does not work well on the back foot, and it was exactly what Esteban was doing against Elvis Brenner. Now, I understand Elvis Brenner is like a much worse version of Mateusz Gamrot, but he was trying to get those hooks off on the back foot against Esteban. He was trying to land some kicks, and he was trying to up the attacks upstairs to then go down below with the takedowns. And I feel like that's exactly what Gamrot is going to do with less kicks and with more boxing. But the problem is, even though Mateusz is going to land quite a few takedowns because of the high guard of Esteban, I think that the once it gets up to the feet, because he's not great at holding you down, especially someone who's in their prime, who's pretty decently sized for the weight class. The difference maker is going to be the pressure. Esteban is constantly going to be on the front foot, constantly moving, constantly twitching. His output is insane. It's not the power, it's the output. And Mateusz doesn't have the greatest chin. He has great recoverability, but he doesn't have a good chin, so he's gonna get hurt. And even if he doesn't get dropped because of the power not being really there, he's gonna feel it. And so I truly believe that it's gonna be a 29-28, possibly split decision, but Ribovic is gonna get it because stylistically, even though Ribovic is not gonna be good enough to make it to the top of the division, um, he is good enough stylistically to pose problems against Gamrot's style, just being not really dangerous. Um, Gamrot. And Kevin Holland versus Randy Brown. I'm going with Kevin Holland. I'm going to say submission, actually. I'm going to say round two because I'm going to say, wow, I'm surprised lots of people are picking Holland on Tapology. Most people on YouTube are picking Brown. I'm going to go with Holland because I think that the difference here is Kevin Holland, he has the power to hurt Randy Brown on the feet. He has the power to make him respect him. So he's going to be working on the back foot. Yes, it's going to be chopping the calf. And yes, it's going to be certainly dangerous for Kevin Holland striking with him in that he could just lose a freaking 29-28 decision off of being the worst striker. However, I think that them having basically the same build, Holland having an even better reach, a 3-inch reach advantage, I think that what's going to happen here is Randy Brown is going to feel too comfortable chopping at the calf and landing the jab that he's gonna sort of leave himself too open when he gets backed up. And I do think that it's gonna be somewhat of a Michael Chiesa, Kevin Holland type of thing, where it's like he's going to be comfortable with his attributes being similar to Kevin Holland's, and he's going to be okay with just playing that safe game at that range. But then Kevin Holland's going to find the moments to actually extend inside. And I do think that his cross is lethal. He is super fast and super explosive with that. And I do think that it's going to find the target at one point or another. And it's going to make Randy Brown respect him. He could get dropped off of it. And eventually he's going to work his way to the ground. Kevin Holland has been working the clinch game a lot more lately. He has been more willing to do that, even when he hurts his opponent. And it's sometimes better to strike with them and finish the fight with the hands. He is more willing to do that, so I think he's going to eventually find the shots, and it's going to hurt Randy Brown. He's going to be more willing to clinch. We saw against um, uh, what's the guy's name? The Pooh Bear. I think it's this. Yeah, Brian Battle. I can't believe I forgot his name, but we did see against him that he's a lot more willing to accept the clinch, and I do think that Kevin Holland is gonna offer him some grappling that he's not really used to. Randy Brown is not a grappler, and he's always even way back in the days against Nico Price of all guys, he got hammer fisted on top to a KO loss. So I do think that if the either way this goes, if this ends up on the ground, I think that Kevin Holland has more tools. I think that on the feet he doesn't. However, I think on the feet it's close enough, and he has the attributes. So I do think that he's gonna land enough of the shots that get Randy Brown on the back foot, and eventually he's gonna work up a Darce. I truly believe it. Aaron Pico and Patricio Pitbull. I think that this is honestly really shocking again that lots of MMA YouTubers are picking Pitbull and a lot of Typology is picking Pico. I'm gonna go with Pico. I don't like how many of Typology is picking him. However, I just think that Pitbull, his time is gone. Pico is in his prime. He looked insane against Murphy. It's just unfortunate that he has a really bad chin and that he happens to always find himself in these moments where he's winning the fights and then he just a freak, freaking crazy out of nowhere, whether it be an injury, a freak spinning attack or just a surprising attack that he didn't see coming will hit him. It's not like that with Pitbull. Pitbull is very traditional with his style. He isn't a very big featherweight. He is really skilled, but he relies on that skill and he doesn't really have many attributes. He relies on these really well-timed overhands off of some feints, off of some jab feints, off of some like leg kicks. He had some pretty solid leg kicks. Those add up. We saw that against Dan Ige. And if you cover up against him, he will work you quite well, and he's quite intelligent with knowing when to go, when not to go. He's quite intelligent with the void, but he's not gonna be like a Laurel Murphy where he's constantly stabbing the front kicks, constantly stabbing the body with the front kicks. I mean, and Aaron Pico on the other hand, I think that he's gonna be able to actually work Aaron Pico. I mean, Aaron Pico's gonna be able to work a Pitbull a lot better than like what Pitbull's looking to do is have you cover up and land some hooks around the guard and some uppercuts and overhands. Pico's going to do that 10 times better just because of his youth, his speed, and the way he cuts the angles. The only times that the cutting of the angles is going to prove problematic to him is when a freak attack like an elbow from a Laurel Murphy hits him unexpectedly. That is not what Pitbull does. He does not hit you with anything unexpected. He's not flashy in any way. He's just very fundamental and technical. He's basically a better Dan Ige, but I don't trust a Dan Ige to not get flatlined by an Aaron Pico, and I don't trust Pitbull either to not get flatlined because Aaron Pico's style is just tailor made to constantly rush you down, constantly pressure you, and find the openings. And if you're a technical striker like that, who's just old and full of mold, and who's not really got a finishing threat like a Pico is susceptible to, I think he's gonna not feel the danger, and I think that the grappling is gonna be kind of null and void from Pico. And Pitbull. Honestly, just off of pure strength and athleticism, I could see Pico getting the better of him. He shoots beautiful. He shot a beautiful takedown against Lauren Murphy, and honestly, he was doing better than a Movsar for the first 3 4 rounds of that fight with his takedown offerings. So I think that honestly, arguably, Pico could do better in the grappling if it gets there. Nate Landwehr and Cub Swanson. I'm gonna go with Landwehr. I think that Landwehr is going to be down for sure. I'm gonna say 29-28 decision. I think he's gonna be down for sure. But Cub Swanson, he's always been gassing in even when he got that comeback win against what's the guy's name? Uh, Billy Quarantillo. I think it's that. Yeah. Even when he got that comeback win in like the third round, he was fading and he was losing. It's just that Nate Landwehr, he always gets rocked early. He always has a slow starter. He always has to feel the punches, feel the power coming his way to then actually find the high guards and then find the clinch and then find the uppercuts, find the elbows, make it dirty, work the body, try and just make it sloppy, try and make it harder for the actual for his opponent to find the clean techniques. He once he makes it dirty, it's impossible for you to actually come back and he is certainly getting chinned. That style isn't working as well for him these days. But Cup Swanson, on the other hand, I don't think that he has the power to make him pay too much. The cross is going to be there, and it's certainly something that's worrying here because Nate Landwehr has been showing a deteriorating chin. But Cup Swanson at 42, do I really trust him to find that cross like he did against Billy Quarantillo? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that early on he could even drop Nate Landwehr and he could make it brutal, but I'm gonna say that Nate recovers. He finds a clinch. He sort of just stalls up against the fence because a freaking Andre Philly was able to work the clinch against Cub Swanson and just survive off of the clinch game. And I'm gonna say that Nate Landwehr in rounds 2 and 3, he then works his way back into the fight and just works the body, the head, while Cub Swanson's gassing, trying to recover, covering up for some air. And Nate Landwehr is gonna land on the arms, just do a little more, just work him a little more. And round 3 is gonna be a little brutal. 28 and 28. it's going to be just barely not a 10-8, I feel like. Dominic Reyes, Johnny Walker. Um, I'm gonna go with Johnny Walker. I know this is a kind of risky pick. I'm going with a lot of underdogs this card, but I think that Dominic Reyes going forward, he relies on you coming forward and countering. However, I think that Johnny Walker these days he's been a lot more patient. Aside from that very wild double leg he shot on Ming Yang Zhang, uh, and even if that happens, I feel like he's honestly the slightly better grappler anyway. Um, Dominic Reyes has always been more of a defensive grappler, but Johnny Walker, I think that aside from that, he's started to be more patient. He's realized that, okay, I'm very sloppy in the boxing, especially in tight and close, and I need to um, I need to work on my distance management, and even though he still hasn't quite gotten there with that, especially in the boxing, the leg kicks I love to see from him. And then that sets up the body kicks, and then that sets up the head kicks, which the head kicks don't usually land, they land on the arms usually. However, the leg kicks we've seen against, I mean, maybe we'll be proved wrong. Maybe Ming Yang Zhang is just really that bad with the leg kicks, but I think that even against Anthony Smith, we've seen that he has those crafty leg kicks. I think it's a thing that Johnny Walker actually has some really underrated leg kicks. He's very powerful. He's very strong with them. He sets them up pretty well with his sort of just sort of doing his like I don't know what to describe it as, but when he sort of paused with his lead hand and then sort of almost looks like he's gonna throw the cross and then he just kind of doesn't commit and then he just goes to the leg kick. Like he is gonna be hard for Dominic Reyes. I think that um, Dominic hasn't really had to deal with these guys who are long and rangy and throw kicks out there a lot. He had the Dustin Jacoby, who is a kickboxer, but he didn't really throw leg kicks too much. He was kind of headhunting there, expecting that, okay, all these other guys were able to knock him out. I'm just going to be able to do that with my cross or something. And then he got countered on going ahead recklessly. I don't think Johnny Walker is going to be reckless. And I do think that these guys, aside from a John Jones who we've seen are very overrated on the feet at the end of his career, that when people have the attributes to match him, he is kind of a fish out of water, and he kind of his sort of posting with his lead hand, just using his attributes and reach isn't going to work against these guys that are actually really talented boxers. And we saw that that was one of the few times where Dominic Reyes going ahead, going forward offensively actually worked because it was a guy that doesn't really have power, and he was kind of an attribute merchant. Um, what was my point with that? We saw that that was like the only way that Dominic Reyes was able to go up against a guy with attributes and win. It was against a guy that doesn't have power, who isn't dangerous, who doesn't throw leg kicks like that. I think that Johnny Walker is a guy that Dominic Reyes hasn't had to face before, and I think stylistically, Walker with his kicking game, with his wild variety of attacks, where Dominic Reyes, if he does come forward, if he does actually overcommit, which we saw against Ulberg, Walker does have the ability to just off of pure athleticism, throw something out there, throw a spinning attack, throw a knee, and it can hurt Reyes. So I'm going to say the leg kicks are deteriorating Reyes. And I think that even though Walker does have bad depth perception with his cross sometimes, like we saw against Jamal Hill, where he kind of just threw it out there and Hill got his head off the center line and was able to line up a cross of his own. I do think that on the other hand, Dominic Reyes is a guy where he needs to be on the back foot to land that cross counter, and I think that Johnny Walker is gonna get Reyes coming in forward recklessly. So I'm gonna say first round KO with a cross. I think he's actually gonna land the cross instead of whiffing on it. I'm surprised that the odds have closed so closely with Josh Hockett and Curtis Blades. He was quite a big underdog at one point. He was like a minus one plus 180, I think. Or no, I think Curtis was the minus 180. Either way, he was a little more sizable underdog at one point. I'm going with Josh Hockett. I am so impressed with the way that he's able to mix up the targets. People think that he just headhunts and then he kind of could just Colby Covington maxes where he goes to the head and then he just immediately goes to the double leg. No, he actually he does have some good body attacks. He does go to the kicks to the body, a really good teep actually. I wonder if he trains with Sean Strickland in that regard. The pressure is just insane from him, and again, going back to like the Esteban Ribovic thing, where it's like, oh, the Elvis Brenner fight was the exact thing I need to see to pick him. Same thing here. It's the exact thing I need to see from Josh Hockett to pick him here against a Curtis Blades. Josh Hockett, um, uh, Curtis Blades' last fight against Rizvan Kuniev was the thing I need to see because Rizvan Kuniev he had that pressure boxing style. However, he relied more on the power, and he also had the really good takedown defense. And Josh Hawkins, on the other hand, he offensively wrestles more than a Rizvan Kuniev, and he's more able to get takedowns than a Rizvan Kuniev. I understand that Rizvan Kuniev he fought two really good guys going into the UFC, a Curtis Blades and a Jailton Almeida, so it's different. However, um, I feel like what Josh Hawkins showed was that look. Jailton Almeida, even though he is really good with the takedowns, it's like Jailton Almeida wasn't able to work the takedowns against any of his last opponents since fighting Curtis Blades, okay? He really wasn't able to work the takedowns effectively. Whereas Curtis Blades was getting taken down over and over and over on repeat. He got taken down 11 times in the first round, I think it was. And so it's like, I understand he wasn't able to offensively do anything. However, Josh Hawkins is not going to guess. He's not going to just give you, he's not going to just give up off of not getting any good control time and just fail into the fetal position and just allow you to hammer fist him like Jailton Almeida did in the second round against Curtis Blades. He's not going to do that. He's going to, okay, this isn't working, and he's going to land some hammer fist. I need to try and switch the position as much as I can. I'm going to try and switch to the back. I'm going to try and move here because Josh Hawkins is a more lighter, more cardio based guy than Jailton Almeida. Jailton Almeida was pretty light, but he gained weight towards the end of his UFC run, and he was also kind of just wet blanketing. Josh Hawkins does not do that. He switches from position to position. He transitions from the back. He transitions from the body lock, and then he drags you down, and then he tries to get the locks with the legs. He tries to get the triangle if possible. He tries to switch from the body lock, and then he tries to go to the single leg, double leg. He does that. He does these things, and he doesn't settle. He never settles. He's willing to just go to the feet, then go up to the clinch, then land some nasty elbows in close in the clinch. And I think that Curtis Blades, even though he's a bigger guy, and it's certainly worrying because the calf kicks isn't something that Josh Hawkins had to deal with before. The jab is certainly something that's going to be a problem here because his reach is insane compared to Josh Hawkins. So it's certainly worrying if he could keep him on the end of his jab, keep him on the end of his leg kicks, and kind of just work him on the striking. However, I think that the moment that Josh Hawkins gets inside, which Curtis Blades, even though he has a really good leg kick and a really good jab, he doesn't have a really good offering once it gets in the pocket. He kind of just shells up. I think that once it gets there, I think it's going to be problematic for Curtis Blades and it's going to be kind of a fish out of water, like against Rizvan Kuniev. And overall, I think that I could see, I'm going to say round 3 TKO. I know it's going to be kind of shocking, but I think that he's going to work Curtis Blades better than Rizvan Kuniev, and he's not going to gas like Rizvan Kuniev, where Curtis Blades survived to the split decision, which he probably should have lost because of the fact that he was able to just rack up like 3 minutes of control time and little pitter pat shots in round 3. So I'm going to say that Josh Hawkins is going to have the cardio. He's going to be probably the most fast paced, most significant strikes or just strikes, total strikes in general guy that Curtis Blades had to deal with, and I think it's going to be a problem for him. And another underdog, dude. I'm picking so many underdogs in this card. Paulo Costa. I'm going with Paulo Costa here. I don't care. I don't care that Azamat freaking got a terrible game plan. Alexander Rakic. Who just stepped in with a freaking cross and just stepped in recklessly without a tight high guard, who just kind of let him get that freaking power jab, leaping power jab on him, who has a bad chin anyways, Rakic. I don't care that he got him. I don't care that he got these long, rangy kickboxing styles, and he kind of figured them out, and he kind of found the moments to bob and weave inside and drop them. I don't care that he has insane power, okay? Because Paulo Costa, he is the style against Azamat Murzakanov. Azamat does not deal with the body kicks well. The Tafa Nezachukwi guy, I think the guy's name is, the first or second guy that Azamat fought in the UFC, is exactly what I need to see against Paulo Costa, as well as the fact that Paulo Costa against a kind of sort of similar style in a Roman Kopylov who has a longer reach, who has a, I would argue a better chin, who has a faster style, who is more quick twitch, who has more tools, but does similar things to Azamat, Roman Kopylov, who got 30-27 by Paulo Costa. Seeing that is exactly what I need to see in this fight. The fact that Paulo Costa goes to these investment shots to the body, that he does the cross to the body, he does the jab and then the body kick to the body. Man, Paulo Costa is exactly what the type of style that can pose problems to Azamat Murzakanov. He is the guy. Even in these fights where people were like this is the exact fight that this is the tell if you're watching an MMA casual when MMA Joey, for example, says, "Oh, he as members of Conov destroyed Alonzo Menifield. He destroyed a Dustin Jacoby. Yes, he did insanely well in round one against a freaking Alonzo Menifield against a Dustin Jacoby. But then what we see in round two against Alonzo Menifield, okay, now he's starting to pick up the pace, Alonzo Menifield. But it was just that Alonzo Menifield was the better boxer, that he found the moment to slip where Alonzo Menifield was getting more reckless on his pressure, and he threw a cross, and Azamat was able to slip and find the counters. He found a right hook to the uppercut, I believe it was. Then same thing with the Dustin Jacoby, where he found the moments to drop him. But then in the third round, he was just kind of accepting the fact that Dustin Jacoby was clinching with him and made a bad fight IQ mistake. But if you look in those fights, round two, he was gassing against a Alonzo Metafield. Rounds one, two, and three, it was basically just Dustin Jacoby was outstriking him, being the better kickboxer. However, Azamat Murzakanov was the faster, more powerful striker and was able to find the moments to hurt him and drop him and win the rounds based off of the knockdowns, similar to the Alonzo Metafield fight against Dustin Jacoby. It's like these guys that he's winning against. They're not the cream of the crop. They're not that high level. And Alexander Rakic was kind of overly ranked based off of beating a Anthony Smith and a was it Volkan? No, it was a Thiago Santos, I think, and a having these less than spectacular performances, and even against a what's the guy's name? Why am I forgetting? The Jimmy Manuwa. Let's be honest, all these guys that he's beating, they aren't guys that have like credible wins in the top 15, in the top 10, in the top 20 even. These guys aren't guys that I mean the let's be honest, the best guy that he's beaten right now, at least in I mean look, Rakic is better, don't get me wrong. However, he's on a crazy loss streak, he's on a crazy losing skid. I think the best guy currently who's on a decent win streak he has is Dustin Jacoby. That's not great. So I'm gonna say Paulo Costa, being a really good kickboxer who has a really underrated chin, who only just got fluked by Adesanya basically, who showed that these kind of styles he can do well against. He rips the body well. He comes upstairs. He's gonna be able to compete with Azamat when he starts to gas with these fast twitch hooks, with these fast twitch jabs, with these fast twitch attacks in close. And I think that he's gonna chop the calf, make the bounce in Azamat's step really hard to deal with because not enough people were chopping the legs. And when they do, they were having success. But Alexander Rakic, unfortunately, he went away from the game plan. He went to takedowns too much, and he was actually doing okay with the takedown attempts. It's just that Azamat has a really good defensive game with the grappling. But Alexander Rakic, he just kind of was stepping in with these reckless punches where he should have just kept up the kicking game and then come in with the punches in the second round more so. But the jab and the leg kick, he should just stuck with. Paulo Costa, he has a better chin. He's not gonna have to be as sensitive and soy in the range kickboxing game. I think that he's actually gonna get the first KO in a long time because Paulo Costa, I think he's in the prime of his career at 34. I think that this is gonna be like just in a year or two he's going to be outside of his prime, but this is like the prime time. This is his time, and I think his performance against Strickland, even though it could have been a 50-45 arguably, those were close rounds, and he was finding these moments where he was actually even though he wasn't setting it up as well as a Alex Pereira, he was finding these moments where he would find these setups against Strickland, where he would jab to the body, and then he would get these reactions from Strickland, where he would try and block these shots below, and he would have these moments where he could line this up upstairs. He can line up hooks upstairs, and I think he's going to be able to see these things that he's doing so well. He's just not able to capitalize. And at light heavyweight, where these guys aren't as skilled, they're mostly power mocking. And I think that Paulo Costa going up against this guy who is a more who, let's be honest, isn't even really a natural light heavyweight. He kind of just relies on his power and being able to step in against these other guys who are light heavyweights, but don't really uh they're kind of getting speed mugged by this guy who should be a middleweight, and this guy who is Paulo Costa, who naturally is a light heavyweight, but he also is a guy that's moving up and who is gonna actually speed mog the speed mogger. I think he's gonna put on an impressive performance and starch him with like a left hook actually after chopping the calf, chopping the body, and then Yuri Prochazka versus Carlos Ulberg. Oh man, I was going back and forth on this, and I could totally see Carlos just absolutely starching him with a similar to the frickin' Romanian guy that he got the jab and then the left hook, the check hook. I think that the hook is there. The lead left hook is a problem here, and the lead head kick is a problem here. These are two things I worry about so much in this matchup, and these are the reasons why I was picking Carlos Ulberg up until the day of the predictions, the day of the fights. I am so worried about this fight. However, I am gonna lean towards Yuri. I think that the chopping freaking teeps are going to be there for Yuri. He's that's a new tool in his game that's been going to a lot more in his most recent fights, especially against Khalil Roundtree. I like the head movement is a lot better, where it's more so scuffing shots that are. And I understand that Carlos Holberg maybe has more tighter form than a Khalil Roundtree. However, I do think that a let's be honest. I think that he's looking slower. I think that he's like Dominic Reyes kind of just stepped in. That I really didn't like that from him. I understand that he was trying to like set something up, but it just looked so bad from him. He just looked like he didn't know how to set it up his boxing, and so he kind of just stepped in. You should have just freaking kept throwing body kicks and leg kicks, even if he was faster than you. You could have just kept trying to do that, and let Carlos come to you. See if he's gonna do any of that I guess pressure. But Carlos, aside from the leg kick, look, the leg kicks are there for sure against Yuri. But I think that Rakic has better kicks. I said it. I said it. Even though he works in city kickboxing and he has that sort of kickboxing background, I think that Carlos. I think the grappling's going to be basically same here. I think that Carlos maybe has similar level, even though he didn't prove it against a proper like black belt like a Glover. I think that he is just off of pure athleticism and like being a big guy out there. I think that he does have similar attributes, so I think that's going to be kind of null and void. Although I do think that Yuri has better clinch game for sure, and he's going to wear on Carlos. He's going to land those beautiful elbows in close. He's going to land those knees to the body. He's just a lot more pressuring. And I do think that there are moments where, even though Carlos, he does circle out very well, I think that once he starts to tire and once he starts to see that none of what I'm throwing out is going to work, I think he's going to be like the Rakic fight, but it's going to happen later on. I think that he's going to see that this isn't working, and I think that he's gonna sort of rely on these sort of wide, wild hooks which he throws out there sometimes. When the tight hooks that he throws early on in the fight start to fade away, and he's kind of just getting sloppy, he's gonna have to rely on a Hail Mary hook, a wide Hail Mary hook where he's just kind of hoping that it lands, and it's just kind of not really there. The form isn't there. Yuri Prochazka, he dips his head way too well. It's just gonna be scuffing over the ear. It's not going to be like too clean. It's going to be like just barely on the dome. It's going to be just barely on the cheek where he lands. Yuri Proska's head movement's getting way better. He's his feints, his constant movements, his dips. It's not that predictable. It's really not. And I think that it's going to leave too much there for Carlos to think about. And the body kicks are going to be there, the leg kicks are going to be there, but I just think he's not going to a lot of power on those. He does have power when you're coming forward too recklessly, and it's certainly worrying. I do think he could get dropped at one moment in the second or even the first. But I think that Yuri's going to play a little bit more cautious in the first round, and the reason why Khalil was able to actually hurt him so much in the first round was because he was actually going forward. But Carlos Ulberg is not going to be going forward too much. He's going to be trying to play that sort of distance game like he did against Dominic Reyes. I think that it's going to lead to Yuri Prochazka actually doing quite well in that round, because people act like, oh, he just loses all the first rounds, he loses all the early rounds, and then he pours it on. Even if that's the case, he always gets these close competitive rounds. Even still, he always gets these investment shots, these little hooks up to the body, ripping the body, getting these beautiful teeps, slipping against Jamal Hill, boom boom, um, drops him, and then he fakes with the high guard, and then he dips down and then comes in with the he parries your shot and then comes in with the wide right hook. I mean, not wide, but like the tight right hook, and then he's just. I feel like even though Carlos is going to have the speed advantage in the first two rounds for sure, and I think that these investment shots are very great from him. Yuri Prohaska also has those. The leg kicks are kind of flimsy, I'm going to be honest, but the teep kicks are much more nasty than whatever body attacks that Carlos Holberg offers. And against a guy like a Volkan Oezdemir, he was kind of just waiting for him to come forward, and then off of pure athleticism, he was able to land these wide body shots, but they're just not as tight as Yuri Prohaska. They're just not. And I think that Yuri Prohaska's style is more tailored to an endurance war fight. So I think that Carlos, he has a really good chin. It's going to take a while for him to get TKO'd, but I do think that's going to be similar, very similar to the Rakic fight, where he doesn't get put out completely. However, I do think that the initial attacks that lead to the finish is going to get a lot more brutal, similar to the only loss of Carlos's career, where his head gets completely spun back by a counter hook from Yuri Prochazka. So I'm going to say a lot of teeps, a lot of a lot of a fakes with the head movement. Some spinning attacks are going to be there, and I think that Carlos Ulberg is going to look really good in early on, and I think that he's probably going to get a Magomed Ankalaev coming off of this loss. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. It's a risky pick for sure. I think he could land some of those head kicks, and it could be worrying, and those lead hooks are going to be very dangerous. And the jab is going to set it up pretty well, but I think that Yuri Prohaska, with his range, with his tools, with Carlos Ulberg not having fought someone that is very unorthodox like that, I think it's going to be very detrimental and dangerous for him and his style. Especially with his wide loopy attacks. People actually think that he's a very traditional technical kickboxer. He kind of is, but he kind of gets away with that with his athleticism and his speed. He speed mogs these guys and his power. But and he has these very this very like soy kickboxing tit for tat range where he just knows the distance to just keep you at his leg kicking range. But if you actually push the pace, he gets really sloppy with these wide hooks that just have no telegraph on, and that just have a lot of telegraph on them. I mean, I mean. So with that being said, I just I think he's overrated, man. I do. I worry, but I think he's overrated. Thank you so much for watching Mask of MMA out.